Did you know that home sellers all over the country are starting to throw in the towel and give up and say, this isn't working out, we've been trying to sell this place, no one's making an offer, or they're making lowball offers, and we just had enough. And this is happening in many different areas across the country. In fact, I even have a list for you guys of the places that the sellers are basically giving up the most, because homes are sitting on the market on average 45% longer than they were just 1 year ago. And that's a huge increase in the days on the market. And it probably comes as no surprise that most of this is due to the high interest rates. And I know some people will say, well, the interest rates aren't high. They were high in the 80s, when it was 17 and 18%. Yeah, guys, but home prices were only 70 grand back then. So let's put things into perspective. Home prices are high, as well as interest rates being high, which is not a recipe conducive to a hot real estate market. Something's got to give, and it looks like the home prices are going to be giving before the interest rates give, because interest rates actually started ticking back up again this week. And like I've told you guys many times before on the channel, this was going to be temporary with the interest rates going down. It only lasted a few weeks, and now they're going back up. And you can almost guarantee that into 2023, for the first half anyways, they're probably going to continue to go up. You might see some small fluctuations like we've been seeing, where sometimes they go down a little bit, quarter point or maybe even half a point, but eventually they go back up. So right now there are so many listings being removed from the market that Redfin says this is the most they've seen listings come off the market since 2015. I mean, that's 8 years, guys, that we haven't seen this many homes come off the market in such a short period of time. Where are some of these listings coming off the market? So we'll jump into where this is happening in just a minute. But before we get into that, it might be important to discuss what might happen in these cities where they're taking the listings off the market. Because when you have a lot of sellers taking listings off the market, the immediate effect is home prices might remain stable or flat. It might hold up the values because there's less inventory available. But in all reality, home sales are very slow this time of year anyways, so it's not like a big surprise. And it's also quite normal for sellers to take their homes off the market during the holiday season, as they don't want people coming in and walking around their house during the holidays while they're trying to take time off and spend time with their families. But we already know from a previous report from a couple weeks ago that a lot of these sellers plan on relisting their homes in the springtime. So by the time March comes around, a lot of these people that are taking their homes off the market are probably going to come back and try again. So here are the places that are seeing the most listings come off the market the fastest, and this could be a clue of where you might see the most inventory return to the market in the first half of 2023 as these sellers try to relist again and try to get back into the market. But only this time they're going to have more competition from new construction homes, from people also who decided to list their homes and cash out before it's too late, investors trying to cash out, etc. And that's why I think we're going to see a huge inventory wave coming in 2023. So at the top of the list is Sacramento, California. They've seen about 3.6% of their active listings removed from the market just in the past month. And San Francisco is right behind them at 3.4%. Then you have Oakland, California, 3.3%. So as you can see, the top three right there is the Bay Area. I know Sacramento is not really the Bay Area, but it's close enough. Seattle, Washington, 3.2% of the listings being removed. And then back to the Bay Area, San Jose, California. It seems like the Bay Area is ground zero for how much home prices are going down right now, as well as the amount of people giving up. And I think that's just going to be excellent news for anyone who lives in this region right now, going into 2023 if they want to have a better shot at buying a cheaper home. Next on the list is Boston, 2.9% of the listings removed. Then you have San Diego, 2.9% of the listings removed. Denver, 2.7%. LA, 2.7%. Philadelphia at 2.7%. And there are other cities on this list, and I have it linked in the description below if you guys want to go check that out. I just wanted to name the top 10 for you because that's where we're seeing the most significant changes, and that's where I think you can very much predict that you're going to see the most inventory coming into 2023. Now here's a cautionary tale of what can happen when you just put all your eggs in one basket and you decide, you know what, I'm going to own real estate, but everything I own is going to have an adjustable rate mortgage on it. And that worked out very well for people when mortgage rates were basically at historic lows for a long time. This is a story from a man in Canada. When he got his mortgage, it was only at 1.5% interest rate, guys. Can you imagine? That's basically like paying almost no interest on a property, which is a dream scenario, and I can easily see why someone would opt for that, because when you're getting a rate that low, it might be worth taking the chance, right? And the payment for his primary residence was only $730 a month. I mean, you can't even rent, a total piece of crap studio apartment in Miami for that anywhere here. Just to put into perspective like how cheap that is. And he also bought an investment property and had this 1.5% rate locked in as well, and his payment on that was $1,100 a month. So right off the bat, this looks pretty good. But when you have a variable interest rate mortgage, it's subject to go up. And that's exactly what happened to him, just like so many others. Now both of these properties are hovering around a 6% interest rate instead. So imagine, it has more than doubled for him, basically tripled. And now his primary residence payment is up to $1,165, and his rental property is up to $1,775. And so that means now he has to come up with an additional $1,100 a month, basically overnight, to cover the mortgage on these two properties. So that's how fast things can turn around when you go for the variable rate mortgage and then all of a sudden the interest rates go up. And he's subsidizing the rental property right now because he has a lease from the tenant, and he can't just say, well, now you have to pay more. So he has to basically come out of pocket for not only his primary residence, but the rental property as well. And to quote this man, he says that these new rates are choking him. This has gone up far more than he ever thought that it might when he first landed this deal. He knew that the interest rates could go up, but didn't think it was going to go up this much this fast. And he has had to make all sorts of sacrifices just to hang on to his properties right now. He's foregoing going to concerts, no more hockey games, no more restaurants, no more drinks at the bar with friends, no more movie theaters, no more social life essentially, because all of his extra money now is going towards just hanging on to these two properties right now. And obviously he's not alone. A lot of people who took adjustable rate mortgages are needing to do the same thing right now when it comes to cutting back. And honestly, this is what I'm always telling you guys on the channel, like, hey, cut back on your expenses right now, save money, get out of debt, because whether you think it's a recession or not, this is going to help you over the next couple of years, because this economy is not going to get better overnight. It's going to take years for this whole thing to recover and for things to start looking up again. And the more money you have in the bank and the more you're prepared to weather any sort of downturn, you're going to fare far better in this thing versus people who are still swimming in debt right now, and then payments left and right are going up from your electric bill, your water bill, your adjustable rate mortgage, your gas bill. Anything that you need to pay for right now is going up, guys. This guy's also needing to cut back on things like there's not going to be any vacations for him going into 2023. That's completely out. Cutting back on memberships, like streaming websites, the gym, basically everything, guys. And to me, this sounds like the worst case scenario when it comes to owning real estate, and this is a situation that I never want to find myself in, and it's a reason why I would not get a variable rate mortgage. The only way, let me put it like this, guys. If we get into a situation in the future again where interest rates are extremely low, and I buy an investment property or a primary residence, whatever, doesn't really matter. The only way that I personally would take a variable rate or adjustable rate mortgage is if I'm getting a very low rate for set 5 years, whatever, and I have the cash to pay off that property, but I'm choosing to get a mortgage anyhow because the rate is so low. So basically my strategy there would be I'm taking advantage of the extremely low rate for financing that's basically, under the rate of inflation. And then when the rate expires, if you can't refinance into something cheaper, then just pay the whole thing off. That would be the only scenario that I would go for something like this into the future. And if this guy that we're talking about here could have done that, he would be doing quite well for himself right now. But instead, he decided to gamble, and he doesn't have the cash to pay these properties off. And now he's stuck, living paycheck to paycheck, essentially trying to pay down the debt on these properties. And to me, whether you're an investor or just somebody who wants to have a place to live that they can call home, I would never want to find myself in this situation. But just like we were talking about earlier, of all these places where home listings are being removed from the market right now, imagine all of the first-time home buyers that bought under similar circumstances during the pandemic. They stretched themselves too thin and got the most expensive house that they could afford, and on top of that opted to get an adjustable rate mortgage. That's the kiss of death right now going into 2023 for these people. And it's almost a guarantee that a lot of these people are going to be forced to list their homes for sale, not because they want to, but because they have to. They can't keep up with the payments anymore. And the even bigger picture that we can look at with all this is, while it's good for folks to be cutting back right now and saving more money and spending less than they normally would on a lot of things, this has a ripple effect throughout the economy, because you have people who are doing it by choice, like me, and then you have people that are doing it out of necessity, like this guy from the story. And what this does is it shrinks the economy, guys. People are not out spending money like they were a few years ago. Ultimately, this is going to have a spiral effect where you have people spending less money, and as people spend less money, businesses start to get into trouble, and they first start laying people off before they eventually go out of business because they're not making enough money to stay afloat. And then that just continues to ripple from there. All the people that got laid off, well, they're not going to be out spending anymore because they don't have any money. They're on unemployment. They're just barely surviving. The business owner, he's bankrupt. He's not spending any money, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, this situation can spiral out of control pretty quickly, and I think that's exactly what's happening right now as we speak. And that's why I think that going into 2023, you're just going to see the overall economy get worse. It's amazing to me how many of these new listings I'm coming across where they're just basically marketing the property as empty land, even though there's actually a house here, but they're saying the house is so old and so bad, you might as well just tear it down and build a new one. The current owner of this home bought it in 2017 for $700 grand. Now they're asking $1,738,000. And it just seems like every day I turn around when I start planning out these videos for you guys, I am seeing sign after sign and new signs that things are just turning for the worse right now when it comes to the economy. But I look at all this as good news. I say turning for the worse because this is bad news for people that have, all their wealth tied up into one single thing, or, they're basing their entire retirement on just, their stock market portfolio or their house, and their equities going down by the day. But overall, I look at this as a good thing because this correction is desperately needed right now. But here's the most recent thing, guys. Luxury home sales in the US are down almost 40% year over year right now. That is a massive decrease in just 1 year. And it's no surprise that the luxury market's getting hit because, let's face it, guys, a lot of people that buy luxury homes, they're just as overextended as people who are buying starter homes. A lot of people are fake rich. They don't really have the money, or they take everything they have and pour it into that one property and hope that it's all going to work out. And you know what? This is the largest drop in luxury home sales that we've seen in 10 years. So do you see the trend here? All these numbers and figures that are coming out are the largest we've seen in a decade, the largest we've seen in 8 years, the largest we've seen in 15 years. Like every time you turn around, every single week, it's the largest drop in this or that in the last 15 years. And what happened back then? was the last housing crash. And during the last housing crash, when they saw the biggest decrease in luxury home sales, guess how much it went down by then? It went down by 31.4%. Now, guys, the number is 38.1%, 7% higher than it was last time. So I know a lot of people think that this housing crash is not going to be as bad as 2008 because of X, Y, and Z. You know, the lending standards are higher now than they were before, and people who are getting the mortgages are well qualified. People have the low rates, so they're not going to be selling. You can believe that all you want, but there are larger dynamics at play here in the general economy that are just going to force a lot of people to sell that don't want to sell. And not only have the luxury home sales been going down, but the inventory of them has been going up. In fact, luxury home listings are up 5.2% year over year right now, and that's the largest increase that we've seen since 2016. And it's pretty safe to say that by 2016, after the last housing crash, the market was in full recovery and was pretty healthy back then. And no wonder we saw so many new luxury listings come back to the market, because a lot of people with money knew that, hey, this is a good time to jump back in. Let's try to sell this house again. But now you're already seeing the listings tick up at those same numbers really at the beginning of this housing crash, which is pretty interesting if you ask me. To me, this is a huge sign that a lot of people with money are trying to cash out before it's too late. But when you see how much these luxury home sales are going down by, I think they're already too late. And just like I was telling you guys earlier in the video that all these cities where they're seeing the most listings come off the market, it's safe to say that if you're in the market of buying a luxury home, which Redfin defines as like the top 5% of what the home values are in your area, so it can vary depending on where you live. But I think a general rule of thumb, like any home that's over $500,000-$600,000 is probably considered a luxury home in most areas. So if you have been diligent and you've been saving during the recession, when the time comes, there's a good chance you might be able to get those properties at a significant discount, especially when no one else can afford them and the seller wants out or needs out. So get ready for that. Now, for anyone who has been struggling trying to get out of debt, or just basically have a simple budget and you're just struggling trying to pay the bills, there are some solutions to this for people like you, and there are some easy things that you can do to try and turn things around. And one thing that a lot of people who are struggling with money are turning to right now is cash stuffing. And if you don't know what this is, cash stuffing is when you take all of the money that you need to pay your monthly expenses, and then you put it all into cash and you separate them into envelopes. So you have an envelope for the rent, you have an envelope for the groceries, you have an envelope for the utilities, you have an envelope for, discretionary spending if there's any room for that in your budget. And you don't have to do this just with cash. There are apps out there like Mint that you can use that can help you budget with your money. But the cash stuffing is good because what it does is it forces you to really take a hard look at how much money you have, and it's right in your face in the form of cash. And what you're supposed to do is you have all of your money separated into these different envelopes, and then say when it's time to go to the grocery store, you grab the envelope for the grocery store, bring that there, and that's what you have for your groceries, guys. You don't bring the credit card, you don't spend any more than what you have in that envelope. So if there's $200 in there, the grocery bill needs to be at or below $200, okay? So it forces you to stay within your budget is what cash stuffing does. And I actually did this before I even knew there was a term for it back when I first moved to Miami and I was young. I just moved here, I was 20 years old. And I personally did it for a couple of different reasons. Number one is because my job paid me all cash. So every day I would go home with cash in my pocket because I worked at a restaurant. And when you make cash every day, the easiest way to keep track of it all was to keep it in an envelope. And then since I was also just learning to live on my own back then, I'd always lived with my parents before that, I needed to learn how to budget as well. And so I had an envelope for the rent, so every month, like put the money in there because that's the most important thing. Okay, the rent is paid. I got that all set up. Now put the money in an envelope for, the grocery bill. Now that's all set. Now I have another envelope for the utility bill. That's all set. And then at the end, because I had basically no other expenses besides those things, I had some money left over. And little by little, it taught me how to budget and how to just make sure that all the bills are paid. And then when you have money left over, you can spend it however you want, or you can save it, whatever you want to do with it. I personally recommend saving it or investing it, but obviously people need to have a little fun too, and spend a little sometimes as well. If you're struggling with money, maybe you should give this cash stuffing a try, because I feel like it's a really good way. It's a hands-on way that will force you to really look at how much money you earn and to force you to pay attention to where it's all going. Because when you just put everything on the credit card or the debit card, or you just have all your money in the bank account and pay your bills online, like you don't really see where the money's going, And now I do things like that, but I'm a very self-disciplined person, and after a couple of years of doing the cash stuffing, and once I didn't earn cash anymore, I got paid with a check once I started in real estate, then I felt comfortable, not needing to do that anymore, and I was able to budget my money pretty good from there on out. But if you're struggling, give this a try, because this might help you out big time when you're not just seeing numbers on a computer screen, you're seeing cold hard cash in front of you, and once it leaves your hand or your wallet, like that's it, guys. So it's a good way to tighten the belt right now. I want to wish everybody who's watching this video a beautiful and happy new year into 2023. I'm looking forward to growing the channel with you guys and being here with you all the way through this next year. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. And if you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.